Creating content takes time, and time that we don't always have. So I have had so many conversations with organizations where I've said, just spend a year, spend 6 months really creating a lot of content and pushing it out regularly. And then you can have content that you can update, reshare, and reuse over time. It doesn't always have to be brand new. And that's why I'm so excited to have Jon Clemens on the podcast today to talk through kind of how we can take our existing content and make it work for us. Not just in our ability to share on social media or reuse, but also to make sure that Google and SEO is still working in the background to continue to push forward that content that we worked so hard to create. Jon Clemens is a professional editor and writer. He also runs an editing and writing agency. Jon helps businesses improve their written content to attract more people to their websites and convert them into new clients. And what I love so much about this conversation is that it is activities, action steps that anybody can take, regardless of your tech experience, your SEO experience. It's really just simple little things that can make big impact on your business, on your SEO, on your organic reach, on ways for people to find your content, engage with it, connect, and most importantly, convert. So I know you're going to find a lot of value in this episode and really be able to take action right now. And there's even some tips in here for how you can utilize your volunteers to help you do some of this work so you don't have to tax your staff time on it. Okay? So I hope you enjoyed this episode, but before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by our August freebie. This month, it's 11 tools to help you speed up and streamline your content creation. So if you're creating new or making updates or just need help with editing and proofreading, this has all of the tools that I use in my business to help make things better, faster, and more effective. So I hope that you'll check it out. You can download the guide at thefirstclick.net/resources and grab this freebie or any of the other freebies that we've released this year. Remember, there's a new one every month. We're having so much fun talking content creation here this month, and so I know this guide will help you put into action the things that you've learned while you listen to these episodes. So again, thefirstclick.net/resources. Let's get into the episode. You're listening to the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Sami Bedell-Mulhern. Each month, we dive deep into a digital marketing or fundraising strategy that you can implement in your organization. Each week, you'll hear from guest experts, nonprofits, and myself on best practices, tips, and resources to help you raise more money online and reach your organizational goals. Hey friends, please join me in welcoming Jon Clemens to the podcast. Jon, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Sami, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to have a discussion.
Yeah, I love talking blog and content creation. And so I'm really excited that you're here because it's a lot of work sometimes. And so repurposing is a beautiful thing. So I think we're going to have a great chat today. But before we kind of jump into some strategies, like why does reusing old blog posts or just kind of creating new from things we've already created, why is that something that is exciting to you?
Yeah, it is exciting to me because it's like this time saver hack, right? Like you've already done the hard work of coming up with a topic and, creating your outline and doing the hard work of creating that blog post or whatever it might be. And so if there's a way to take that existing work you've already done and bring some new life into it, get some new value out of it, like it's just a total, hack that's wonderful. So we can go into kind of some of the reasons why that is the case, but it's at the end of the day, it's often can be just a time and energy saver.
Yeah. Well, and we'll definitely get into the whys of it, but I kind of want to start with okay, this sounds great in concept, but how do we even know where to start? Like, how do we know which content we should be repurposing or reusing or updating to get started?
So Here's how I look at it. I actually call these traffic magnets. So what I would recommend doing is go to your analytics and look at your posts. And here's a little extra hack is look at the ones that are 2 years old or over that length of time, because anything older than 2 years, Google tends to push down in their results. So like that's the number one thing is it 2 years old or over? And then after that, if you can find some blog posts that have pretty good readership rates, so you're getting a lot of clicks to the site and getting a lot of people kind of looking at that page, but then the follow through is low, so the click through rate is low, or not a lot of people are moving on to the next thing in your website. like that's a great candidate to go and update and revitalize and maybe potentially rewrite, because you're getting the links, you're getting the views, you're getting people there, but they're not doing the next thing that you want them to do. So if you can tap into that, then you're going to start to see results. So I call those traffic magnets, and those are the ones where I would strategically place my time and my energy, because I think you'll see the best results.
Well, and potentially, if it's older, the calls to action might not be current or accurate anymore. So it's also just a great way to make sure that the stuff that's getting good traffic is actually promoting the things that are current for what you're doing right now.
Yeah, and actually that's usually one of my talking points, actually, because that does happen, right? And think about it from your reader's point of view. If I go to your website and I am interested in learning more about your nonprofit, helping you out, getting involved, and I click on the link that says get involved, and it turns out it's a 404 page, okay, well, I guess I'm not getting involved then, right? So that's a super important thing to remember. Are your calls to action current? And if they're not, make sure they are.
Yeah. Okay, so before we get into the tactics and how we actually go about updating the blog post, you mentioned kind of the why. So now we kind of have it easy in our brain, like, okay, we know exactly where to start. And you mentioned, Google tends to suppress some of those older pieces of content, but, why else might we want to use this as a strategy instead of creating brand new?
Yeah, I think, again, to me, it goes back to that efficiency thing because, and we'll get into this more in a bit, but there are some things that you can do to older content to refresh it, to make it more appealing, that are actually very simple to do. And so it's a very quick win to, for example, go into an older blog post you have and add more white space, break up your paragraphs, because people who are skimming or people who are looking at your website on their phone, that helps them engage with you in an easier way. So that's a super easy thing. Anybody can hit the enter key, right? That's super easy to do. So it's just, there's just so many different ways that you can repurpose and reuse and refresh content that's already existing, that it just makes a ton of sense to just dig into that. And that's not to say that you can't also create new content. Of course, you want to have a good balance. But the one and done idea, it's great to get started, but let's build on that now. Let's grow. Let's take it to the next level.
I love that. And what a great task for a volunteer, if you can really outline, okay, here's the spreadsheet, here's the post that we know we've identified we want to update. You just need to go in and change the formatting, and this is exactly how you do it. That's a great way to utilize an office volunteer that has a little bit of a tech background. So I think that's a really good quick tip there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about kind of the ins and outs. So, okay, we're on board. We're just going to go through and repurpose some of our content. We've identified the posts that we know we want to start with, outside of kind of just creating some white space or formatting and things like that. Where do we want to start, and how much effort, time, and what do we want to put into these pieces of content? Yeah,
so let's start with the effort first. So generally speaking, and this could be different for you personally, but generally speaking, to write a new blog post, you're probably talking in the neighborhood of 5 to 6 hours, because there's research, there's drafts, there's editing, there's all that stuff. As far as going back and making updates to older posts, you're probably looking at 2 to 3 hours. So you've automatically, saved a couple hours there. And that can be a good gauge too, for how long you might tell someone, okay, this should take about this long to do this task. If it takes longer than that, let me know, because something's wrong, right? And there are a ton of things you can do to take that old blog post and give it new life. And if you go to my website, I've actually got a free guide. You can just download it, and it just tells you a ton of things you can do. It's pretty straightforward. And we'll talk about that, at the end of the show. But in the meantime, I kind of want to just drill down on 3 things that are super easy and probably the biggest bang for your buck. So if you want 3 things you can do right now to, go back and make your blog post better, I would suggest number 1, look closely at your introductions. So we live in an attention economy, right? If I don't get your attention within just a couple of seconds, I probably won't get it. So think about your introductions in light of that. Maybe you've got a shocking statistic related to your nonprofit that you can start that blog post with to really hook someone. And so they can say, I had no idea that that was a true thing, right? Now I'm interested. Maybe you've got a story that you can share from yourself or from someone you've worked with that has some drama to it that ties into that topic. Maybe start with that story, right? Give people something to hook into within the first couple sentences instead of just like diving right into whatever the content is. So that's a great tip, is just look at those intros, and if you can make them more engaging and a better hook, then do it.
Yeah.
Number 2, we've already kind of broached, and that's the adding white space piece. On top of that, look at any headers you might have, any kind of call outs, any kind of graphics. Do those show the logical progression of your blog post? Because if they do, what's going to happen is people who are reading on their phone or people who are just skimming, which is most of us, let's be honest, they're still going to get the value out of that post. And if you do a good job with that, they're going to skim through that post, look at it on the phone and go, okay, this has value. I need to go back and interact with this at a deeper level. And then finally, something else we've already talked about, but just to bring it up again, that call to action. Make sure that you have a call to action to a current product, service, offering, whatever it is. And in addition to, the fact that sometimes you have old ones and that doesn't do your nonprofit any good, the thing to remember here is that none of us has ESP. So right? Like in my business, I'm an editor, I'm a writer. So when I write a blog post, like I live in this every day, all day. I just automatically assume, people know what they should do. They should contact me and hire me and I should worry. But that's just not obvious if you're not me, right? So if you have a nonprofit and you've got these blog posts or newsletters, social media posts, whatever they are, make sure you have a call to action. Tell us what you want us to do because we really don't know. And it doesn't necessarily mean give money, although it could. It could also mean sign up for our newsletter. Click here to see the openings we have and how you can get involved, right? It doesn't have to be some kind of transactional thing, but it just needs to be whatever that next thing that you want the reader to do, just flat out come out with it because we just don't know. So those are the 3 things, just even those 3 things, right? The introductions, the white space and headers, and the call to action. If you could even just focus on those 3, that is going to get you so far down the road, and you're going to see some pretty cool results, I think.
Well, and I love that because we talk about that all the time on this podcast. If you don't ask, you're giving yourself a no immediately. You're not, giving people the next step to take. So I love that you brought that up because that is very much a strategy that we talk about all the time on here. And so I love those 3 things. They're super easy. So my next question is, once we've repurposed and maybe not repurposed, but once we've kind of reformatted and updated that blog post, now what do we do with it? Do we just leave it where it is in kind of the list of our blog archive, or do we republish it? Do we what do we do with it once we've done the work?
Yeah, so you don't want to necessarily change the publish date in your metadata per se, but it is good. It is a good practice to go ahead and put at the top, just in text, last updated on, and then that can clue in people that it is still being relevant and updated, and Google will know. So you can leave it there and then wait, a month, 2, 3, and see what the organic SEO results are, and that's totally fine. One thing that I like to do is I like to actually just pull social media posts from my blog posts, pull the value out, pull the little nuggets out, and post them to Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever it is you post, and then, with a link to the rest of the article. And I like that because I like leading with value, right? Mm-hmm. I think if I can give people something of worth for free, and if I can kind of set myself up as an expert or as the go-to person, that's going to stick in their minds. And then when they say, oh yeah, I wanted to get involved with this area. That's right. There's that nonprofit I follow, and they're always having such great advice. I'm going to go check them out, right? So you can create really as many social media posts as you want out of a blog post. So I'd recommend that. If you have the resources, there's absolutely no reason you can't take those same blog posts and write, video scripts for YouTube or for Reels or for TikTok or whatever your, social media choice is. This is one thing I run into as well is a lot of people have this dichotomy in their mind of, well, I can either do video or I can do a blog, or, because of YouTube is so big, I don't need to do blogs that are worthless. Well, that's kind of a limiting belief in my opinion, because you actually need both, and they can both reinforce one another. So, there's actually no law against taking a blog post and making a video out of it. You can totally do it. It's totally fine. So any way that you can find to, kind of promote that blog post in addition to, the normal SEO type stuff, I think those are all good ideas.
I love it. Yeah, we take our podcasts and we turn them into blog posts with additional resources a few weeks later. So repurposing the content, and then we turn them into all sorts of different things. So I love that you brought that up, because we're all stretched with trying to figure out how to create content on social media. And that's what I love about long form content, is it makes everything else easier. You put in the work once and then you can reuse it over and over and over again. But that leads me to, and we didn't talk about this ahead of time, so I'm curious your thoughts on, like, if we're kind of updating and kind of recreating our blog posts, like, is there an AI tool that you like or that you use or that has kind of helped you with kind of some of the optimization or kind of maximizing on the content that's there and just refreshing it? Or do you like to kind of stay away from the AI piece and just revamp it based off of where you are within your organization and kind of the priorities that you have?
Yeah. So I'll give you an answer and then I'll tease out some nuance. How about that?
Yeah.
So if your goal is to write a blog that looks like every other blog on the planet, then I would totally use AI, because that's what it's going to spit out. But if you're trying to write a blog post that's actually going to grow your audience, help your mission further, get further down the road, AI isn't going to do that for you. Now, that being said, I totally use AI, okay?
Yeah.
So I have found AI is a great tool for brainstorming. Mm-hmm. So if I need to know, let's just say creating new content, for example. Hey, ChatGPT, I need 20 ideas for blog posts. This is my nonprofit. This is what I do. This is what I'm trying to achieve. Can you give me some ideas? And it'll spit out 20 ideas. And 5 of them will be good. 2 of them will be amazing. And the others will be, okay, I guess. So that's a great use for AI. Another great use for AI is going from nothing to something, right? Because sometimes the absolute hardest thing to do is to stare at a blank page and go, oh my gosh, what do I write about? Yep. So AI doesn't have that hold up, right? It can totally give you something. But when you start outsourcing your creativity, your thinking, your long form writing to AI, that's when you get into trouble, because it's just, all the AI that I've seen is boring. It's repetitive. It doesn't take a strong stand on anything. It doesn't share anything engaging. It's just blah. So yes, use AI to help with brainstorming, with getting something on the page, with getting you unstuck potentially if you're in a place. But I personally don't recommend going further than that, because it's going to sound like AI and everyone is going to know that it's AI. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's going to help your business or your nonprofit get to where you want it to be. Yeah.
That emotional connection isn't there, and you can feel it when you're reading the content. For sure. I agree. The other thing that I like to use AI for is when you do have it done, taking your words and having it help you streamline the repurposing side of things. Like, I think that can be really helpful. Like, we love using AI to say, okay, here's a long form piece of content. Give me some key takeaways. And then from there, it's easier for me then to just write a bunch of content and things like that. So I think it can help you in that regard. But I agree with you. The writing and the scripting and all of that stuff should be genuine in you. So I thought that was a very great answer. We're very much aligned on all of these things, Jon.
Good, yeah. And I will say too, like, to that point, I did try AI to write actual blog posts, and it's okay, right? Yeah. It's fine. It's not as good as if I do it myself, but I love the idea, and I've used this as well, of asking AI to help you summarize and take away those key points. That can totally be a time saver.
Yep. Okay, so I guess the next question for me is, what percentage, and I know this isn't an easy black and white answer. I know it depends on our data and all of these other things. But if we're kind of thinking about our content strategy and putting together, we want to do 2 blog posts a month, or we want to have 2 blog posts a month that we're promoting or whatnot, is there a balance or a best practice with regards to how much should be brand new versus how much we can just repurpose? Or does it not matter?
I have yet to see a consensus on that ratio. I've seen a number of answers, so I don't want to even hesitate to answer to provide a guess. I think it's much more important to say whatever number or ratio you decide upon to just make sure that happens, right? Whatever your content schedule is, make sure you do it. And as far as repurposing old posts, because remember that 2-year nugget that I shared that Google doesn't like content over 2 years old? To me, it almost makes sense to just put a little tickler on your calendar of every 3 months, every 6 months, every year, we're just going to go back and look at older blog posts that are, it's been 2 years since we touched them and we're going to go back and look at them. I feel like that might be a better approach than to try to come up with some kind of magic ratio.
Right, because it might be that when you look at your data, you find, that maybe in the last year you had 10 posts that performed really well that you might want to update. And the next year, maybe it's 5 or 30, right? So it might be that that ratio for your organization shifts, and that might shift kind of your priorities, because we don't want to update things that people aren't engaged in. And so to that end, as we're looking at our data, I think, do we want to look at these are the top 5% of our performers, or we're looking for a certain amount of traffic based relatively on our regular traffic? Or is it just kind of just start testing and just start with your top performing ones and then kind of work through them as you kind of have the space and time to do so?
Yeah, I like the idea. Yeah, I think I said it's so hard because there's no hard and fast numbers with any of this that I've seen. So, for example, my company, we offer this thing. Well, we'll take up to 20 blog posts and revamp them for you. But if you only have 20 blog posts, maybe that doesn't make sense, or maybe it does. I don't know. I think if you can just dial in and say, okay, what are my top traffic generating posts with the lowest, response rates, whatever that looks like in your context. And then maybe the percentage is based on your capacity or your volunteers' availability. Yeah, so that's a really good question. It's probably a lot more business related than necessarily SEO related. Yeah.
Well, and then the other thing to think about too is I think the most common pieces of content that I see being updated every year would be those things that are an annual thing, right? Like my top 23 tech tools, or my top 2023 tech tools, or, things that are an annual thing. Some of those, it just makes sense to maybe update every year as opposed to create brand new from an SEO perspective as well, right? Could you talk about maybe some of those types of pieces of content that just we would want to just update every year?
Yeah, I think those top, the top 10 lists per year, that's a wonderful example where you wouldn't want to even wait 2 years, right? You need to do it the next year, in January, you need to update those. And that's a good point. You're going to have some content, and hopefully a lot of content that is educational in nature and a little more evergreen, right? And so those are probably a little lower priority, like you said, than the things that deal with a current event or topic, or the latest and greatest in technology. But even the educational stuff, it's good to go back and look at it and say, okay, is there anything in this content that is dated, that is old, that's not evergreen? And it could be something just even as simple as a passing remark, in last year's Super Bowl, Michael Jackson performed. Well, that was, how long ago was that? I don't even know, because maybe he didn't even perform. I don't know. I don't watch the halftime show. But, or I always give the example, if you're running a tech company and you have a blog post that mentions Y2K as if it's currently happening, you should probably update that blog post. That's way too old. So I love that idea, though, of saying, these types of content are a little more current event based, and so they need to be updated more. And these others are more evergreen and educational and informative, and we can maybe update those less. I really like that idea.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of my last question, just kind of piggybacking off of that, is also, the organization of our content. So I'm a big fan of a spreadsheet that tells me, all of the things about my blog post, what the call to action is, when it was last updated, all of those things, so that it's easier to go back and make sure, okay, these might need to be updated, this, that, and the other, because you can do a whole bunch of searching and whatnot. But do you have a format or a way that you like to track and kind of keep track of all of the different pieces of content or blog posts that you're creating. So it is a little bit easier to marry, okay, here's what the data is telling us, but here's also what we've already created, so we don't have to go through and fish through everything on the back end of the website.
Yeah, I'm a spreadsheet junkie too. So I used to work in quality as my old career, my former life before COVID. And so I understand the value of process, and I understand how important it is to document things. So I'm right there with you. I have nothing to add. I think the spreadsheet approach with the relevant data, you can't beat it.
Yeah. Well, and I think then too, if you marry that with a project management tool, then it's really easy to say, okay, this is something we know we need to update every year or every so often, and kind of just automatically track all that stuff for you, make your life easier, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I agree 100%.
I love it. Are there any other kind of strategies or pieces of advice that you would have as we're kind of looking through our content and making updates and resharing of information? I mean, you've already given so many great tips and takeaways that people can implement right now, but is there anything else that might be missing or that you might want to share?
Yeah, I just want to add one more key tip, and this is another blind spot that we all have, and it's just something we just constantly need to be aware of. And that's when you're writing a piece of content, we all have the tendency to talk about ourselves. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, like, you're a great person, and so are your listeners, and you guys are doing amazing things, and that is absolutely wonderful. But when someone is reading content on your website, they don't care about that. Yep. They care about how can you answer their question, how can you solve their problem, how can you help them grow, whatever it might be, right? Because we're all starring in our own movie. And so it's just a good idea to remember when you're writing or updating or doing social media, whatever it is, to remember that the person reading that is the star in their movie. And so if you can put the spotlight on them and help them grow, give them value, and kind of put yourself in the back seat, then I think you're going to have a lot better engagement and you're going to make a lot more resonating content. And that's not to say you can't ever talk about yourself, of course, but just how can you put the spotlight on the other person? That's just a great tip to remember as you're communicating in really any format.
You say that so much nicer than I do. I usually go straight to nobody cares about you, and there's 100 other organizations that are doing the same thing you are, so your way to step out is exactly what you said. But to remember that they're the star of their own movie is a much nicer and kind of aspirational way to put that. So I think that's a great tip. Well, earlier you mentioned you've got a great resource. Jon, if people want to connect with you, download that freebie, and learn more about kind of how you support organizations, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can go to my website. So it's cedarpressproofreading.com. And as I mentioned, I've got a free resource. If you're interested in taking old blog posts and giving them new life, you can just go right to my website. You can download it. I don't need your email. I don't need your phone number. It's just there for you. So that's my gift to you. And then if you want to connect, you can book a call via the website. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. So you can search for my name, Jon Clemens, or you can search for Cedar Press Proofreading. I'll show up either way. Send me a connect. We can talk. If I can support you, I will. And if not, we can at least be friends. So that's how you can get a hold of me.
Yeah, and we'll make sure all that is linked up in the show notes at thefirstclick.net/270. So all of those resources will be linked up for you right there. Jon, this was awesome. I think super easy for people to, at any skill level, no matter what the size of your organization is, if you have a lot of techie people or not, they can implement everything that you shared. And so I really love that because a lot of our listeners are small teams. So thank you for breaking it down for us in such an easy to understand way.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome.
Okay, I really love this conversation with Jon because, like I said, all of the steps were really easy and actionable and don't take a lot of technical experience, but you can still get results. So I hope that you will take some time and effort into going through your analytics, paying attention to what's working and what's not working. Because the other thing that we didn't have a chance to talk about today, but that is so important, is that we don't always know what's going to resonate with our audiences. The data tells us what our audience is super excited about. So to be able to see what they're engaging with and reuse and repurpose and update it is only going to help your organization grow. Not only from that point or that post, but also when it comes to coming up with new content ideas for things you want to talk about in the future. And I love that he mentioned value add, because you know that's what I'm all about. So get going, get writing, get repurposing, and get reusing. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And don't forget that you can grab the show notes at thefirstclick.net/270 for all of the freebies that Jon mentioned that he was so generous to share with you all. And while you're here listening, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Leave us a review, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.